Here's a truth you probably haven't considered. A woman doesn't start missing you just because you go quiet. Silence isn't a magic button. It doesn't automatically switch her emotions back on. And in many cases, it doesn't pull her closer. It simply creates more distance. A lot of men misunderstand what silence actually does in a woman's mind. You think, if I stop talking to her, she'll realize my value. But that only works when she already felt your value to begin with. When a woman is still emotionally connected, silence can create curiosity, reflection, even a bit of tension. But when a woman has started drifting, disconnecting, or mentally stepping out of the relationship, your silence doesn't create longing. It creates confirmation that stepping back was the right move. Before I welcome you to the channel, let's slow down and look at the real issue here. Most men use silence as a reaction, not a position of strength. You're not quiet because you're focused on yourself or because you're genuinely detached. You're quiet because you want her to notice. You want her to feel your absence. You want it to spark something inside her. But women don't respond to silence in a vacuum. We respond to context. We respond to how we already felt about you. We respond to the emotional footprint you left before you pulled back. If the connection was weak, unclear, or inconsistent, silence feels like relief, not a wake-up call. And here's something you may have never heard from a woman directly. If your presence didn't create emotional impact, your silence won't create emotional tension. Missing someone only happens when who they were actually mattered. Now let me officially welcome you. I'm glad you're here because most men never get the chance to learn this side of female psychology. Today, I'm going to break down why silence doesn't always work, why some women pull even further away when you stop talking, and what truly makes a woman feel your absence. 1. She can't miss what she never felt. A lot of men assume silence has the same effect on every woman. They think disappearing automatically creates mystery, pressure, or longing. But here's the honest truth. A woman can only miss you if she was emotionally connected to you in the first place. Silence doesn't create emotions. It only amplifies the ones she already had. If she didn't feel depth with you, silence won't suddenly create it. It won't pull her back. It won't change her mind. Missing someone is emotional, not logical. And when there's no emotional foundation, your absence feels neutral, not impactful. Most men don't realize how quickly a woman can detach when she isn't invested. She doesn't sit around analyzing your silence. She doesn't wonder where you went. She doesn't replay old conversations. Her mind simply shifts away from you. And the more she disconnects, the less your silence means. Imagine a woman who liked the idea of you, but never felt anything real. Maybe you talked for a bit. Maybe you saw each other a few times, but nothing truly touched her emotionally. When you pull back, she doesn't feel tension. She feels clarity. She thinks, okay, he's gone quiet. That's fine. She doesn't chase because she never felt pulled toward you in the first place. She just continues with her life, and your absence blends into her normal routine. There's no emotional vacuum, no sense that something is missing. What many men misunderstand is this. Missing someone happens because of the connection, not the silence. Women miss the man who made them feel safe, understood, excited, desired, or mentally stimulated. They miss the emotional imprint he left behind. If you never created that imprint, your silence is just silence. This is why some men panic when their no-contact strategy doesn't work. They thought the lack of communication would trigger something inside her. But silence doesn't build attraction. It only reveals what was already there. And sometimes what it reveals is that she wasn't invested enough to feel your absence. This should be a wake-up call, not a punishment. If your silence isn't making her miss you, it means the connection wasn't strong enough or meaningful enough for her. It doesn't mean you're unworthy. It just means she never felt deeply engaged with you. And if she never felt anything real, she can't miss what she never emotionally experienced. 2. Silence doesn't work. When you have no presence. A lot of men underestimate how important their presence is in a woman's emotional world. Presence is not just being physically around or texting consistently. Presence is the way you make her feel when you interact with her. It's the energy you bring, the confidence you carry, the clarity you communicate with, and the emotional space you create when you're in her life. When a man has strong presence, a woman feels it even when he's not speaking. She remembers the way he carried himself, the way he expressed himself, the way he handled situations, and the way he made her feel seen and understood. That's what stays with her. That's what silence amplifies. Your presence is the emotional anchor that makes a woman feel your absence. But here's the issue. Men who rely on silence to create attraction often haven't built that foundation. They go quiet without having made any real emotional impact. And when your presence hasn't been felt deeply, your silence won't be felt either. It becomes empty space instead of emotional tension. Women don't miss the man who simply existed in the background. They miss the man whose presence they could feel, someone who brought clarity, confidence, direction, warmth, or emotional depth. If you didn't bring any of that, then silence doesn't create curiosity. It creates indifference. Another problem is that some men mistake presence for attention. They think if they text a lot or stay available, that means they've made an impact. But presence is not about the quantity of interaction. It's about the quality. A man can text all day and still be forgettable. Another man can see her once a week and leave a stronger impression. Presence is emotional, not logistical. This is where many men go wrong. They think silence replaces presence. They think pulling back can make up for what they didn't create. But silence doesn't build anything. It only magnifies what's already there. If there's no emotional imprint, silence reveals that. If your presence wasn't powerful, your absence won't be either. 3. You disappear, but she doesn't feel the loss. One thing men rarely consider is how a woman processes absence. You might think that disappearing forces her to feel something, but that only happens when she already sees you as someone meaningful in her life. If she doesn't feel that way, then your disappearance doesn't create loss. It just creates silence. Women don't automatically feel the impact of your absence. They feel the impact of what you meant to them before you pulled away. If that meaning wasn't established, then your silence has nothing to amplify. It becomes background noise instead of emotional pressure. And here's what many men don't understand. When a woman doesn't feel the loss, it doesn't mean she's cold or unfeeling. It simply means the emotional connection wasn't deep enough for her to register your absence as something significant. People only miss what adds value to their life. If she doesn't associate you with emotional value, then your absence doesn't take anything away from her. Some men assume that because they were present, consistent, or available, that automatically means they were valuable. But value isn't determined by effort. It's determined by the emotional effect you had on her. You can talk to a woman every day and still not be someone she feels connected to. You can invest time, energy, and attention and still not leave an emotional mark. That's why disappearing doesn't always create loss. Loss only happens when something meaningful is taken away. Another thing to understand is that women adjust quickly when they're not invested. If you disappear and she doesn't feel anything, she shifts right back into her routine. She doesn't analyze it. She doesn't question it. She doesn't start doubting herself. She simply continues. Not because she's heartless, but because there was nothing emotionally powerful enough to pull her back in. 4. She reads your silence as weakness, not strength. A lot of men don't realize that silence can send the opposite message of what they intend. You might think going quiet shows strength, discipline, or confidence, but depending on the connection and the way you've carried yourself, a woman can easily interpret your silence as insecurity, fear, or emotional immaturity. Silence doesn't automatically communicate power. Sometimes it communicates avoidance. Women are extremely aware of emotional energy. We pay attention not just to what you do, but why you do it. When a man goes silent with confidence, you feel it. He doesn't chase, he doesn't need validation, and he doesn't use silence to get a reaction. His energy is grounded, self-assured, and stable. That kind of silence feels strong, and women respect it. But when a man goes silent because he's unsure, hurt, confused, or trying to force an outcome, women sense that too. And that silence feels weak. It feels reactive. It feels like he doesn't know how to communicate or handle his emotions in a mature way. Instead of seeing you as composed and self-controlled, she sees you as someone who runs from emotional discomfort. This is why intent matters more than the action itself. If your silence is really a form of emotional hiding, hoping she'll reach out first, hoping she'll validate you, or hoping it'll make her chase, you're not coming from strength. You're coming from need. And neediness, even in silence, is still neediness. Women also read patterns. If you've never shown emotional leadership or stability, but suddenly disappear, she's not impressed. She's confused. She wonders if you're playing games, punishing her, or trying to manipulate the situation. Women don't respond well to what feels like emotional control. When silence feels strategic instead of genuine, it loses its power. Here's the part men overlook. Strong silence is anchored in a strong identity. It's the silence of a man who isn't afraid of losing her. The silence of a man who knows his worth and doesn't need attention to feel secure. When a man like that steps back, it makes a woman pause. She respects it because it isn't coming from fear. 5. You're waiting. She's moving on. A mistake many men make is assuming that silence freezes a woman in place. You think that if you stop talking to her, everything between you just pauses. But women don't operate like that. When you go silent, you may be waiting, watching your phone, hoping she reaches out, or convincing yourself that staying quiet will somehow shift the power. Meanwhile, she isn't paused. She's processing, adjusting, and moving forward, quietly, steadily, and sometimes faster than you expect. When a woman senses that you've pulled back in a way that feels strategic or emotionally uncertain, she doesn't sit around trying to decode it. She simply interprets it in the simplest way. He's not trying, he's not invested, he's not serious. And once she accepts that, she starts shifting emotionally, not out of spite, out of self-protection. Women don't stay emotionally open to men who don't show emotional stability or clarity. Sometimes a man goes silent, thinking it will make her reconsider her options. But what often happens is the opposite. She starts reconsidering you. Not because she's angry, but because your silence creates a new reality she has to adapt to, and adaptation happens quickly for a woman who already had doubts. Picture a woman who's been unsure about where things are going with you. She's been feeling a little disconnected, maybe confused about your intentions. The moment you go silent, she doesn't panic. She interprets it as your answer. She tells herself, "All right, he's not in this." And she shifts her attention back to her own life. She becomes more present at work, spends more time with friends, or opens herself emotionally to new interactions. She doesn't do this to replace you. She does it because your silence told her there was nothing to hold on to. The hard truth is this. While you're waiting for her to feel your absence, she's building a world where your absence doesn't matter. And the longer you stay silent hoping she'll break first, the more comfortable she becomes without you. 6. Your silence isn't the problem. Your impact. Is here something most men fail to understand. Silence by itself isn't what makes a woman miss you. It's the emotional impact you leave behind that matters. If you haven't created something memorable, meaningful, or magnetic in her mind, your silence isn't going to do anything. She won't feel it. She won't pause. She won't reconsider. Silence is just quiet. Women respond to the man who leaves an imprint on their emotions, not the man who disappears. That imprint can come from a combination of confidence, charm, clarity, humor, intensity, or emotional intelligence. It's the way you make her feel when you're around, noticed, understood, desired, or challenged in a way that keeps her mentally and emotionally engaged. If you haven't created that energy, silence won't turn into longing. It turns into irrelevance. Many men think their presence is enough, but presence alone doesn't equal impact. Showing up, being available, or simply talking to her regularly doesn't mean she'll miss you when you step away. Emotional impact is about depth. It's about moments that matter. It's about leaving her feeling something after every interaction, whether it's excitement, curiosity, safety, or desire. That's what makes your absence meaningful. That's what makes your silence potent. The problem is that men often rely on silence as a shortcut. They think if they stop communicating, the gap they create will force her to notice them. But women notice substance, not absence. If you've been predictable, passive, or emotionally flat, disappearing won't suddenly make her realize what she's missing. She'll notice the silence for a day, maybe two, and then it becomes background noise. Life goes on. Your perceived power evaporates because it was never rooted in real emotional presence. Another point is that impact is cumulative. A single strong interaction might be memorable, but consistent, meaningful emotional engagement builds resonance. Women remember the way you made them feel over time, not isolated moments. If you've never established that, silence won't change her perception. It only highlights that your presence was forgettable. 7. If you want her to miss you, become someone worth missing. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most men don't want to hear. If your silence isn't making her miss you, it's because you haven't made yourself memorable in the first place. Disappearing won't create desire, and hoping she'll feel your absence won't make her chase you. Women miss men who leave a mark, emotionally, mentally, and even physically. If you haven't done that, silence is meaningless. Many men believe attraction is a game of timing, strategy, or manipulation. They think withholding attention or going quiet will trigger longing. But the truth is, longing is earned, not engineered. A woman will only feel it when she has a reason to. She needs to feel that you added something to her life, not just that you were there. If your energy, presence, or emotional investment hasn't made an impression, your silence won't create one. This is where men often fall into a trap. They focus on tactics instead of substance. They try to manufacture mystery, avoid communication, or play hard to get without ever being someone worth chasing. And here's the constructive criticism. If this describes you, it's time to wake up. No amount of disappearing will fix a lack of presence, confidence, or value. You can either keep hoping silence works, or you can focus on becoming the kind of man who naturally creates emotional impact. Only one of those paths actually leads to results. Becoming someone worth missing doesn't mean pretending to be confident or faking charisma. It means developing yourself in ways that matter. Cultivating ambition, building emotional strength, taking care of your body, being decisive, showing integrity, and expressing yourself with authenticity. It means creating experiences with her that leave a lasting impression. It means being consistent, engaged, and emotionally available, but in a way that doesn't scream neediness. That's the man who gets remembered. Let me leave you with a truth most men don't want to hear. Silence doesn't create longing. Impact does. If your absence isn't making her think about you, it's not because she's cold or manipulative. It's because your presence never left a mark worth missing, and no strategy, no matter how clever, will fix that. This isn't about punishing yourself or feeling defeated. It's about reflection and action. Ask yourself, when you were present, did you truly make her feel something she couldn't forget? Did you create moments that mattered? Or were you just there? The answer to that question is the key to understanding why your silence hasn't worked. Here's the controversial part. Disappearing in hopes that she'll chase you often backfires. Women aren't pawns, and attraction isn't a game of who can pull away first. Real attraction is emotional, not strategic. And if you want her to miss you, it starts with becoming someone who leaves an emotional imprint. Presence first, silence second. So here's what I want you to do. Reflect on your impact, understand your value, and focus on building a presence that she can't ignore. Stop relying on absence as a tool and start becoming the man whose presence truly matters. That's when silence stops being empty and starts being powerful. Now I want to hear from you. Share your experiences in the comments. What worked, what didn't, and what you've noticed about how women respond to silence. I'll be engaging with you because this isn't just theory, it's real psychology, and real growth happens when we learn from experience together. Remember, silence alone never made a woman miss a man. Presence did. Make sure yours counts.